My name is Richard Löwenstein, and you're listening to the Theme World podcast. Have fun!
Hey everybody, I'm AJ. That's Joerg over there. This is
Hi.
the Scene World Podcast.
Yes. So, in a minute, Andrew Fisher, Professor Andrew, the gaming expert, and I are talking to Stefano Arnhold. That's the chairman of Tectoy, and we talk about the limited edition Megadrive 2017 that was released last year. And
while they do that, I'm
about...
going to get dinner.
Okay. Well, enjoy.
Yeah, I'll be somewhere else while they do that.
Okay. Well, anyway, you will see this podcast is a lot longer than the first part, because the first part we only had like 40 minutes and it's kind of rushed. And this time we got plenty of questions to ask him, and he answered them very detailed. So, before we go to that, let's jump into our news section regarding Gamescom, because that's happening soon.
Yeah, we're not doing a real normal news section here. This is coming out a little early after our last podcast. We did news there. If you want to see some news, go check out number 50 with Lars Sabiri.
Nice.
This is number 51. That was my sports number in school, 51.
Okay.
It's also
the number... positive or negative?
Oh, I like 51. 51's always been kind of like my lucky number. So
my lucky number is 33.
It's ironic then that I wouldn't actually be on the 51st podcast.
Ooh, I'm sorry for that. Yeah, but some people are pretty busy and only have a certain variable time frame.
Yeah, I was on vacation. I took a holiday, so I was not there. And whilst I thought in the beginning maybe I'd be able to take part over the phone or something from the middle of the woods. That's not exactly how that occurred. I had no service. I couldn't have taken part if I tried.
Wow.
So, but it was nice to get away from everything for a bit. So that was
fun. No scene worked for a week.
Ooh. Yeah. Oh, it was so lovely. So nice.
Nobody asking you, so when is that video coming out?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So, we talk about Gamescom. So
this is being released. This will be released on around the 18th-ish or so. Gamescom is occurring the week after that, so from the 20th to the 20th.
Yeah, well, actually, it's happening from the 21st to the 25th. Mm-hmm. But as we are an exhibitor, we have to get there one day early, and as we have to, build down and remove the stuff again on the 25th in the evening, I would rather go and travel back to my place on the 26th in the morning rather than in the middle of the night.
Right. So
that's the plan.
So if you're listening to this around the time of release, Gamescom is about to happen. If you're within a week of release of this, then Gamescom is happening. And if you happen to be in Germany, if you happen to be in the general area of Cologne. Then you should swing by and say hello at the Scene World booth.
Yeah, it's the largest video game fair in Europe and the third largest worldwide. So you are probably going to miss a lot. And also, a lot of publishers actually announced that they wouldn't show their new titles like THQ Nordic at E3. And skip for Gamescom. And that's actually something that's pretty surprising, because in the past it was shown at E3 in USA first, and then it was reused for Gamescom.
Right.
And this year it's a bit different. Anyway, so there are a few appointments we are looking forward to, and of course, among many, that would be Pro Evolution Soccer for Konami, and of course,
we should see if we can get ourselves another review copy, because we had, what was it, 2016?
Yeah, sure. I will ask them.
Was it Pro Evolution Soccer 2016 that we got to review?
Yeah.
And that was, back in 2016. It would be cool to be able to check out their new, see where it's going, because, it was really cool, but there were some, dead, lifeless eyes amongst the players.
But for this, you need your gaming PC.
Yeah, well, I'll look at get one.
Well, then get one. Otherwise, it'll be impossible. Other things is the new Larry LeShoot adventure is getting a new part.
The new what?
Larry Leisure
Suit Larry.
Okay. Okay. So let me redo that. So the new Leisure Suit Larry is coming out. Wet Dreams Don't Try.
Okay.
And it's actually coming out by Assemble Software. That's a German company. And former workers from Calypso actually formed this company. So Calypso probably rings a bell. That were the publishing company also re-releasing the Rings remastered for the PC from Cinemaware when Lars Furkan Partista was still the CEO of the company.
Uh-huh.
So they published that. I actually got a version myself from Amazon from Calypso. And also they concentrate on re-releasing PC games back in the days and other games, if I'm not mistaken, Hanse, the old strategic game, got a re-release after over 30 years under their name. And they also did Pizza Connection 3. So...
Okay.
Well, so they are concentrating on continuing old IPs and old games that we knew and love. So, right. And so we will talk to them. The other thing is, of course, we will also talk to EA. That's at least on the list. And we try to talk to them about Battlefield 5, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
So, yep. And of course, we will also talk to the CEO of Compotech Publishing, Hans Ippisch.
Mm-hmm.
And Hans, we interviewed him for the YouTube channel about his history for Rainbow Arts and making Soldiers, the first forbidden game to protect the youth.
Yeah, right.
And so he made quite a name. So we talked last year to him about the news in the business. And so this year we will talk about this again. So we always meet with him and talk about the change of the music industry from the perspective of a retro gamer,
Right.
So that's our plan here. It's actually funny because this year a lot of publishers are actually, continuing to concentrate on the retro gamers. And that is something that was totally out of the picture in the past, where they actually mainly concentrated on getting new gamers, the youngsters, and not the average gamer, which is between 35 and 45.
I feel like a lot of young people are also discovering the older games now. Retro gaming is kind of You can go into any Target or Walmart or any store like that, and in the computer area, in the technology area, there are, NES, well, not NES, but Atari Rewinds and Sega and all that stuff, Genesis.
Yeah. Exactly, and we talked to Sega about re-releasing Sonic Mania with Mr. Sonic. Sorry, with Mr. Sega, I would say. Mario Döla. So that was one of those podcasts where AJ was out of order, unfortunately, but you can actually listen to it regardless.
I was here for Mario Döla.
No.
Yeah.
You weren't.
Yes, I was.
No.
Yes, I was.
No, because he confused the day, and then he was there one day too late where you couldn't do it.
Was I not there?
No, but you wrote the entry in the podcast like you were, but you weren't. Listen to it.
I could have sworn. Oh, was that one of those weird ones where I was there briefly and then disappeared or something?
No, that was David Fox.
I know it was David Fox, but we did another one too, which was the same. Well, not the same as that, but
yeah, which was with Ron Gilbert.
Was I not there with Fabian Dalla?
No, you weren't. Not for a second.
Oh my god, my memory is shot because I totally thought I was there.
And it's written wrong on the homepage. So. But I never went to correct it, so people think you are part of it, but you are.
I was just real quiet. I didn't say anything.
Yes, so anyway, my point was that even Konami is going to that target of older gamers, and now even 2003 is considered retro. So they are working on a new version of Zone of the Enders, which is an old title from 2003 from Konami, and it's an action game. It's a first-person shooter, and they are re-releasing it for, I think, for virtual reality. So that will be kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Right. Of course, I also hope we hear from Star Citizen. If you remember, when we did the Extra Life thing in 2015, I also presented to you, AJ, this how you say, space simulation thing.
Oh, did you play that? Oh my god, yeah. I can't remember that either. Oh Jesus Lord.
Yeah, I did, and
it's a really cool looking game because it's basically it's Elite, right? It's like is that what I'm thinking of?
Yeah, kind of, but it's not stopping there. You can also go on a planet and go there with a moon vehicle, a Luna robot.
Yeah, right. Lunar rover. Yeah.
Right. So I hope we can actually talk to them.
Or am I thinking of Elite Dangerous? Because Elite Dangerous came out, or I don't know if it's actually out yet, but it was being worked on and it was huge looking. And Star Citizen was that? Did that have anything to do with Elite, or was that just similar?
Not really.
Right.
Not really.
It was just similar in functionality or in background or so to it.
Well, it's a Chris Roberts game.
Right. It's
probably originating in Wing Commander and stuff.
Oh, okay. Wing Commander. Yes, that's the other. That's a good one.
That was the video game series with the awful movie. Yes. That was totally boring.
That was the video game series in which the video game series because I think it was Wing Commander 3 was like almost all full motion video.
Yeah,
and in which the full motion video of Wing Commander 3 is a better movie than the actual Wing Commander movie.
Exactly. And it was funny because it was the game series that combined the characters from Star Wars and Star Trek. So Mark Hamill Han Solo was the good guy.
No, Mark Hamill was
Star Wars.
Luke Skywalker.
Sorry.
Han Solo was Harrison Ford.
Okay.
You just lost all your geek cred with the Star Wars crowd right there.
Okay. So, for example, Mark Hamill, who was Luke Skywalker, and Malcolm McDowell, who was always a bad guy at Star Trek. For example,
Malcolm McDowell was in the movie, was in Generations, but when did that come out? When did Generations come out? Because when did Wing Commander come out?
96.
When did Wing Commander 3 come out?
95.
Okay, but he wasn't Star Trek yet.
No, 95 was Wing Commander 4. So Wing Commander 3 was 93.
Okay, so Wing Commander 3 was 94.
94. Okay, so
yeah, so he wasn't yet a Star Trek villain, but he would go on to be a Star Trek villain.
He was Star Trek villain because he was also in the series.
No, he wasn't.
Oh, he was.
Oh, he
wasn't. Pretty sure about that.
No,
No?
Malcolm McDowell, no.
Okay.
No, he was Soren in Generations, but he was never actually in the series before that.
But he was after, I guess.
No, he was just in that one movie.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Not so sure about that.
I will look it up right now.
That's the first time AJ and Joerg are disagreeing on facts. Oh my god.
He was in Planet of the Apes. He's been in a ton of things, but in Generations he played Dr. Tolian Soren. And then in Wing Commander.
Yeah. So it was before Wing Commander 4. Because Wing Commander 4 was in 95 and Generations was in 94.
Well, no, Wing Commander 3 and 4 he was in, and Star Trek Generations was 1994 it was released.
Yeah. So
Wing
same year.
Yeah.
So my point is correct.
But that was the only Star Trek that he was in.
No, he was also in Generations.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying, in Generations, which was
so I
1994.
got this... okay, in my memory it was 1996.
Oh.
Okay. So my point was correct. Okay. So
he killed Captain Kirk. He was the dude that killed Captain Kirk. Which...
Okay. Anyway, okay, that's count pretty much as a villain.
Yeah.
Okay. So Wing Commander was
Although
the first
he was also in 1997, he was also in the Star Trek Generations video game. So that brings it full circle right there.
Okay, that I didn't know. Okay, so redo it. Let's talk about that. For example, Mark Hamill, who is Luke Skywalker from Star Wars, was the good guy, the hero, and there was Malcolm McDowell, who was the bad guy in Wing Commander. And he was a bad guy in Wing Commander 3 and 4, and also in Star Trek Generations in 94. So,
wait, he was a bad guy in Wing Commander?
Yes, he was the bad guy in Wing Commander.
Really?
Yes, he was. Oh my god. I played the game, of course he was.
So have I, though. Yeah, I played this game too, and I don't recall him being a bad. Maybe in the fourth one he was a bad guy, but in the third, I think he was just like your commanding officer. He was just the admiral.
You can see it even on the packaging of Wing Commander 4. If you look at Wikipedia, that there are two sides: evil, which is him, and Mark Hamill as good guy.
Right.
So we have to record this a fourth time.
I'm saying just leave this all in because this is
come on,
this is a fascinating exploration and just falling down the rabbit hole of this. I played 3. I do not remember him being a bad guy, and I remember him being like the archetypical military commander that maybe you have to kind of go against in order to complete the mission, but he's fundamentally a good guy. You know, he's just sort of, he's just kind of, you know, he wants to pretty much wipe out the Kilrathi, and which are like, you know, the cat bad guys, and you have the option to disobey his orders or the option to obey them. And the game, you know, you kind of win either way. It's just a different way to win the game. I did not play Wing Commander 4, so it's
I
entirely
didn't play
possible.
Wing Commander 3, I played Wing Commander 4.
Okay, so maybe he turns heel in the 4th. And,
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, okay, so that would explain why we have different recollections of him. Anyway, so Wing Commander brought together the actors of Star Trek and the actors of Star Wars.
Yeah, well, I mean, considering that there are two groups of people, the Star Trek and the Star Wars lovers or haters, and they are not really fond of each other, I don't know of any other video games combining two universes.
Not that I can think of. In the Star Trek movie, in the reboot with the J.J. Abrams reboot, there is a scene in which R2-D2 flies past the view screen of the Enterprise. Really quick, you got to go like frame by frame, but there he is.
Never spotted it.
And Simon Pegg, who plays Scotty in the new Star Trek reboots, is also in the new Star Wars movies.
I see.
So,
but that's still not a video game.
No, it has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But anyway, so yes.
Yeah.
What are we talking about? Where are we?
Will be interesting interviews. Yeah.
You know what is another good game along those same lines? A lot of people say Wing Commander is kind of like this this genre starter, but I feel like there was a game before, and I've talked about the game before, and I even played it for a short time when we did Extra Life, which is this game Space Rogue, which was also by Origin Systems. Came out before, it was 1991, I think, that it came out. Or maybe 89, somewhere. It came out in some year by Paul Neurath. It didn't have anything to do with the people that did Wing Commander, but a lot of the same stuff, the spaceflight physics and the way that it was laid out and when going on into the stations and stuff, it felt like a Wing Commander, like they took all the stuff that they learned in Space Rogue and shunted that into Wing Commander.
That sounds a bit like Dune and Command & Conquer.
And I'm talking about the original Wing Commander. You know, not the... We're talking Wing Commander 3 and 4, which was on the PlayStation, which were basically full-motion video thing. The original Wing Commander was for the PC and Amiga and stuff, and it was more...
Super Nintendo.
Yeah, right. It was more, ad-lib, sound card, pixely graphic stuff. Not Mark Hamill acting.
Right.
Anyway, so
let's hop to
what are we
the
talking
Brazilian...
about? How did we get here?
I don't know. We were talking about Star Citizen.
Oh yeah, that's right, Star Citizen. Yeah, I forgot. Okay. Anyway, Gamescom. It also will be meeting. Well, I won't be there, but Joerg and the other members of Scene World that will be there will be meeting you.
Me.
No,
yes.
No, not you. You, the public, the listeners and the readers. So stop by. He'll be in the retro area.
Family and friends.
Yes.
10.2, like every year.
Mm-hmm. And who's going this year?
Well, Martin, the other Martin, Arthur, so same guys.
Cool.
Basically.
So come on, join us between the 21st, yeah, and 25th. Come on out to Gamescom in Cologne and visit at the Family and Friends section, retro gaming area.
Do it.
And give Senad a big kiss on his mouth when you see him for me.
Certainly.
Do we have anything else to cover, or is that about...
I guess.
Oh. Okay. Okay, well, we've got... over there, in another spot where I'm not, is Stefano Arnhold. And I'm going to take a step out. And Andrew Fisher, our illustrious English editor, with a much better radio voice than me, is going to step in.
Gosh.
He's so soothing to listen to.
I enjoy listening to you. I always crack up when I listen back to our podcast.
So he'll be stepping in and taking my place on this, and yeah.
So, welcome to the show again, Stefano. why don't we start a bit, that you tell us a bit, how did you actually get involved into video games and Tectoy? Because I know you are the same age as my father, for example, and for my father, video games is a waste of time, and he doesn't consider a serious business or something to spend your free time with. And you are working for Tectoy, so you are constantly involved in that topic. So how did that all start?
Well, I started getting involved in video games. My first attempt was with Game & Watch from Nintendo, with handheld games, even before the video games. I visited them in Kyoto. I think it was 1981 or 1982. I don't recall the year exactly. And I was working with my uncle in the photographic field, right? And I thought this could be an interesting new branch for us to diversify. And at that time, to import finished products to Brazil was really tough, nearly impossible. So I approached Nintendo and explained them that I would need to assemble the components locally in the industrial area of the free zone of Manaus. And they were not very happy with this idea, right?
Okay.
But we somehow overcame the problem when they said, okay, what we can do, we ship the finished product to a trading company. You can arrange with them to disassemble it in pieces, and they can send it to you in pieces, and you reassemble it, and we are not involved, and so on. Okay. So the project was going fine when I showed it to my uncle, and they wanted the letter of credit, right, to guarantee the payment.
Okay.
And my uncle got mad because he said, look, I am whitelisted in the MITI. MITI is the Ministry of Trade and Industry in Japan, class AAA plus, whatever. At the same time, when he was not very happy to, let's say, open an exception and open a letter of credit, Sharp in Brazil invited me to join them. Sharp in Brazil was a joint venture of a huge Brazilian group with Sharp Electronics of Tokyo, of Osaka, right? So as they knew that I was in contact with Atari and especially with Mattel Electronics, they hired me for their strategic planning area. And we were then bidding for the Atari 2600 to introduce it in Brazil. Eventually, we lost the battle to Polivox. Polivox was a subsidiary of Gradiente. And they won the bid, and they took the license to manufacture and introduce the Atari 2600 in Brazil. And we at Sharp made the deal with Mattel Electronics and introduced Intellivision in Brazil, right? And but Sharp was basically a TV company at that time, VCR, and let's say the video game business was very small for them. So we had tough time inside the group to develop let's say the sales area was not so fond of selling video games. Right? And then we introduced MSX. We got the license from Microsoft. And then my boss at Sharp, which was Mr. Daniel Dascal, left Sharp and decided to open Tectoy when he then invited me to join Tectoy. And then, of course, one of the first things we did were the mini games, not with Nintendo, but we had our own line of handheld games that we licensed games from Tiger. We had their whole line, and we had our own line. And of course, the video game was the top of our list. And that's when we approached Sega and started to negotiate with them a toy. It was a laser gun, a laser tag. So our first product with Sega was not a video game. It was a toy, their toy division called Zillion. It was based on the anime. It was a famous Japanese anime, Zillion. And we aired it in Brazil, the cartoon too, the anime. And it was a huge success. So this helped us get the license to manufacture and distribute Master System in Brazil.
Yes, that was one of Tectoy's big products for many years. And by manufacturing in Manaus, that avoided the import taxes that made other consoles cost a lot of money.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. Till today, we still manufacture Master System in Manaus and still collect the tax incentives to have a competitive price.
So there are many games in Tectoy's catalog that were translated into Portuguese and even rebranded for the Brazilian market. So I'm thinking particularly of Monica's Gang, which was rebranded Wonder Boy titles. Was there a lot of work involved in the translation and rebranding?
Yeah, it was. We did the localization of Phantasy Star for Master System. That was a huge project because in English the words are shorter, the sentences are shorter, and the memory, you didn't have so much memory in those cartridges. They were quite tight, right?
Yeah.
So, but we got a lot of experience when we made the localization of Phantasy Star for Master System. And also, well, one of the advantages of manufacturing the product that we knew what we were doing, right? We were not just selling a product. We knew it from inside. So then we wanted to have, let's say, local heroes in our games. So we approached Mauricio de Souza, which is the creator of Monica, which is really huge in Brazil. And we talked with Sega to get the license to be able to change Wonder Boy into Monica. And everything was working beautifully when Mauricio saw the sword. And then he said, no way, we have to stop this project because Monica never carries a sword. This is against the character. No way, forget the... So we went back and said, how do we save it? And then one guy from our marketing department said, well, why we don't substitute the sword by the little rabbit? It was a blue rabbit called Sansão. That she was also, till today, she kicks all the other guys from the gang with this and hits them with the rabbit. So we came back to Mauricio and he said, wow, that's an excellent idea. So everybody was happy except the development group, because when we came back to them and said, look, you remember the sword, now you have to change it into a blue rabbit. And so it was not easy. They had to do technically, basically by hand, the bits. It took them, I think, 1 or 2 months just to change the sword into the, the rabbit, because of the challenges of the technology at the time. Today you would do it in seconds probably.
Did Tectoy have official Sega development kit, or did you create your own?
Yeah, we had everything you can imagine. We had their tools, of course, but along the time we created many tools at home. Even in the future, when we took Game Gear games and converted them to Master System game, this was done, let's say, by hand in the beginning. You had huge problems with the colors because the palette of the Game Gear, if I remember well, was 40,096 colors, and the Master System palette, I think, was 64. So it was quite a challenge. But then, for instance, we were developing tools, and I think in 98 or something when we converted one of the last games was Baku Baku from Game Gear into Master System. Then probably our tools already were converting this on an high speed and not more, taking months to do it.
Which is Woody Woodpecker in English, actually.
Yes.
No. Woody Woodpecker is Pica-Pau. Baku Baku. No, Baku Baku is an original Sega title, right?
Okay.
And it's a kind of columns game like Tetris, something like that, if I remember well.
Yes, yes, that's right.
I
yes.
confused it, sorry.
Yeah. No, Pica-Pau is Woody Woodpecker. This we licensed from Universal, and then we created an own game from scratch for Megadrive first, and then for Master System and Game Gear.
Right.
I wonder, by the way, because you also did Street Fighter on the Master System, which was quite an achievement for that time. What is your opinion about Capcom re-releasing Street Fighter and Mega Man for the NES and the Super Nintendo right now?
Yeah, well, I think those are all great games, and people today, I mean, they are in love with those retro games. I think more than the games itself, it brings back fantastic memories, it brings back fantastic feelings and atmosphere and comradeships. When we, last year, when we introduced in our 30th anniversary, when we introduced the Megadrive, the original Megadrive in Brazil, and everybody was so excited. I was invited to some meetings in geek libraries and in spaces like that, and those meetings were unbelievable. They never, after like 2-3 hours, I couldn't leave. You know, people wanted me to stay, and invited me to, I don't know, to go all over the country. And what I found out is that when we were talking about those days, right, people were really so enthusiastic, and we were inviting the people to participate, and there was a couple on the first row that got married because they started to play Master System, and they so it's much more than a product. It's bringing back all those fantastic memories. So Capcom will be very successful, I believe.
Are you a big fan of retro gaming yourself?
Yes, I don't even call it retro gaming, right? Because for me, it's is gaming, right?
That's great. That's great. So one interesting thing about Brazil is that it has its own television standard, PAL-M.
Yes.
Does this cause any hardware problems, or do you need special development for it?
Well, not really, because we come from Sharp, nearly right. We were the leaders in the TV manufacturing in Brazil. So NTSC, PAL-M is a son of NTSC. It's not related to PAL from as like you have it in Europe, right?
Yeah.
So for us, it was a piece of cake, because this was, I mean, that was our day by day. For me, we even had in our group IC foundry and IC manufacturer, and we did IC to convert NSTSC or PAL to NSTNC and vice versa. So for us, I mean, the knowledge we had in microelectronics and other things, one of our vice presidents is a genius. Was a genius. He passed away 3 years ago in microelectronics. When I say it, worldwide, not only in Brazil. So, for instance, Sega loved us because we had chats with them in many different fields. So we approached them in order to make integrations of Master System chips and Megadrive chips in a single chip, and those things. So Sato-san, I don't know if you remember him. He was the engineering boss at Sega for video games.
Yes.
He hated us, but he loved us too.
That's actually interesting because you mentioned Genius. And for the new Megadrive, you said 2 years ago, the challenge will be to make the Yamaha sound chip sounding right in the new version of the Megadrive that you are releasing, which is no longer, by the way, a limited edition.
Yeah, we couldn't. The people were so angry when we said we would stop selling, right? And then it was during those meetings. I said, yeah, but we promised we would do a limited edition. Now you're going to be angry with us if we don't keep our promise. And the guy said, but we will be more angry with you if you keep your promise, right?
Yeah, it's a bit like Nintendo with the NES Mini and the SNES Mini. They produced it in limited numbers to start with, but the demand was so high, they've had to make more.
Yeah. So we couldn't keep our promise, and you're right. The Yamaha did a great job. Those sound processors were great. There are 2 different sound processors, and they're really very, very good, dedicated pieces. And the technology was always owned by Yamaha, so. Sega knew very little about the components themselves, right? Because they did not get information from Yamaha. Those were big secrets. And then when the patents had the 25 years and they fell, right? And we were running out of stock because we bought every single chip that Sega had in their inventory, right? And then we were, of course, worried about it. And it was very difficult to replace those 2 processors. And it took us here, I don't know how many months, playing with filters. And we had people, Heriberto here, our chief engineer. I mean, he's probably a direct descendant from Confucius, from China, because the patience he has is unbelievable. So they worked like months just to get, let's say, minimal better sound, a fraction better one day, a fraction better 3 weeks later, and the final outcome was okay.
I know on your YouTube channel you actually put on Mortal Kombat as a sound example, and you could hear how they say finish him, and so you could hear it really sounds very true the original. Of course, if you are a nerd like me liking the original, you can hear a difference, but it's not as bad as like what other companies have released that totally sound horrible and not even close to the original.
Yeah, well, thank you for the compliment. I think that's Heriberto and his group who deserve it, because their patience was really great, because they had to work outside the components, right? And when you work with peripheral and not inside the real, it's not easy. It's a challenge. But I admire the work they did. And I think what was very interesting was that we worked always together with the community. And we were warning them that we would have problems with sound, right? So for them not to take us to court if we could not really get a perfect sound. So when I think the expectation was created was lower. So when the product finally came out, it was not bad, so people were happy. So I think we were smart in the way we didn't create some false expectations.
So how long did development of the Megadrive 2017 take? When did you start work on it?
I think we start difficult to say exactly how long it took, because we part of the development comes from, let's say, from in-house knowledge that we had during the all those years, but a little bit less than 2 years, let's say, because before we were considering to introduce Master System for the 30 years, but we had also a look on Megadrive, how was it going to be, right? And then somebody here said, well, let's ask the community, let them choose, right? So I was so certain that they would choose the Master System that I said, okay, let's ask them. And by my surprise, the community said, no, we want the Megadrive, right? And I say, wow, now we are in trouble because they have decided, and Master System would be a piece of cake, and the Megadrive would be a challenge. So I would say from the time that finally, let's say, we decided it is Megadrive, it was basically 1 year.
Yeah, interesting. So you used the original molds for the Megadrive to create the shell of the Megadrive 2017. Was it important to look like the original console?
Yes, this was a must. We took here a decision that every time we have to decide something, we will decide in favor of the original product, right? Of course, with some exceptions, right? So when it came for packaging, when it came for the look, whatever, to what the controller is going to be, we didn't take any decisions, right? We just said it has to be exactly the same. Unfortunately, we did not have the original molds anymore, right? Oh. But we had the drawings, because like 200 years ago, when you did the molds, the technology was completely different. You are not using the machinery you have today, right? So there were still drawings and those old things, which if you show to people today, they don't know even what those things are, right? They have never seen things like that.
Yes, so, a lot of the Chinese consoles these days would all be done with computer-aided design, done on screen, and then the plan sent straight to the machine to manufacture. So in a lot of ways, that's a retro way of manufacturing, going back to the drawings.
Yeah, we went back to the drawings. The bad thing of the drawings is that you would do changes normally on the final tool that you didn't have time to do in the drawing, right? So, but then we had some engineers here who were at the time with us, that are with us with so many years. And they some of them said, yeah, but if I remember well, this drawing is not correct because we did. And of course, we had the original products here, right? So we could, from the original product, give them to the Chinese, and that was very easy.
You did a change to it. You added an SD card port to it.
Yes. You're right. We did some changes, but which we thought would be beneficial, right? But you are right.
Yeah. So the micro SD card allows you to add games to the system. Do you think that's an important feature on this sort of console?
Yes, we thought it would be important for some reasons, right? First, that we could sell games not necessarily in a cartridge form, right? Second, maybe the most important part would be the possibility of doing some retro feeding to the hardware or to the firmware itself, right?
Yes.
Which was something we were a little bit scared of the whole project because it's different when you are, let's say, we get together and we decide to do a new smartphone or whatever, right? It's completely different. I mean, you work on the product, you test it, and so on. Here now, we had to go back to what was done 1 day ago on the past. And so when the people said, let's put the card and with this card we will be able to retro-feed if we do some big mistake, and after this there were no discussions anymore.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have recently got the C64 Mini, and that has the option to update its firmware from a USB stick, and they're now planning to add extra games to the console through a firmware update. And so obviously the Megadrive 2017 has that capability because you included the card slot.
Yeah, this is it's a big achievement. Also, we wanted to maybe in the future do something different, and so once the idea came, it was approved very quickly.
There are 22 games included on the console. What are your favorites among those?
Well, this is a difficult question because each game has a history. Like Outer Beast, people love it because it was the first game that we gave with the original console, right? So it has a special story, right?
Yes.
The Sonic family is, of course, important one because, Sonic is unique. I mean, and represents a lot. And when we saw it for the first time for Megadrive or for Genesis in a CES in US, I don't know exactly when it was. Now, it was so impressive. So all the memories are there. But if I continue speaking, I'm probably going to speak about each and every game, right?
Yes. So you have a lot of good memories of Mega Drive games.
Yeah. So it's they and so have the people who finally bought the product, right? And the option we gave them to have their name engraved and personalized. This was huge, So the people came to us and they sent me till today. They send me photos of the console with their names by Facebook and some of them bought like one or more than two that they would keep in the box without opening the box, and one that they would open with their name. The stories are amazing.
Yeah, it's obviously bringing back a lot of memories. So you can actually use the original cartridges with the Mega Drive 2017, which is a great feature. Have you discovered many problems or many that are not fully compatible?
Yes. So we have a frequent asked question section in our website that we were adding every time we found a glitch or so. So we had here many discussions what was, let's say, supportable and when it was not anymore. So if you are, let's say, playing Hang On, just to name a game, right? And if you look, if I remember well, on the lower left-hand side, you're going to see some glitches, right? So we decided that those were okay, let's say, So you could, we could launch the cartridge with this problem, right? And then there were others which were not okay. Space Harrier, I think, is one that we did not launch because then the glitch was not small. It was in the middle of the big sprite. And that's what I say, one example of a game that we could not fix. There was no way of fixing it. So if you look to our frequent asked questions, you're going to be there that it's not compatible for this game.
From the lists I've seen online, it seems there's only a very few titles that have serious problems. So most games are playable.
Yeah, because again, Heriberto and his team, they don't give up easily, right? So there was let's say, a problem in such and such game, and so they were tweaking here and there, and of course they could only do it from the hardware side because the software side would already be in hands of the players, right?
Yeah.
So it's not so easy, but they were really tweaking until, and there were maybe a full dozen of games which were on this list that would not be compatible, that through their efforts finally were not in the list anymore.
And that shows the real dedication to the project. In terms of the hardware, I know that the console cannot be connected to the 32X and the Mega CD, but does it support any other Mega Drive hardware and the original controllers?
Yes, the controllers which have the pins is no problem, right? So you can use 6-button controller, you can use your original controller. I think basically anyone you bought, right? Let me see here from the top of my mind. Let me see. I have a paper here. Let me just check. Yeah, let me see here because I don't remember very well about. Game Guinea, Sega CD, Power Base Converter, 32X, MegaNet, Activator, Mega Mouse, multi-taps. They don't work.
Right.
Yeah, now you wanted the country, the ones which work. Yeah, I think that basically only the joypads.
Right. So does the Menacer light gun work with the console?
Yeah, probably. Let me see here if I have Menacer in some place. No, I would have to Menacer. Yeah, I have here that Menacer was still under tests.
Okay. No problem about that.
Yeah,
Actually,
give me a second. Let me see if I find Heriberto. If I find him, if he's here. Heriberto, você aqui no FAQ diz que a Menacer, a gente iria testar ainda a compatibilidade dela com o Mega Drive novo, Mega Drive Retro. Você sabe como é que ficou isso? Não fizemos. Tá. Ok, valeu, obrigado. No, he said they didn't come to a conclusion. So Menacer is not in the list of allowed, and so no, we still owe this answer.
thanks for answering that. I wonder, by the way, why you decided to go for the 3-buttons controller and not the 6-buttons controller, despite some games wouldn't be controllable without the 6-buttons controller.
Well, first, as I told you, every time we had to take a decision, there was a law in the Bible that said you have to go by the original product. So this was an easy decision. We wanted to introduce the 6-button controller for the people who liked, let's say, fighting games and so on, right? And we finally then found out that the demand was really small, and some people wanted. We had still some 6-button controllers in stock, right? So we sold one or other here and there when somebody approached them. By the way, even today, they found one more here. They were sending one to a consumer. So because the problem was that from the financial point of view, it would be not easy to remake this controller just to do, I don't know, a handful of items, right? So this is one that we more or less solved with a few pieces.
Interesting. It's surprising me. I thought it would be totally different because, especially because of Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter being so much liked titles that most gamers would say, no, 3-button controllers are enough.
Yeah, that's you. I think you are 100% correct. But the problem is that when then you try to do feasibility studies, and because most of the whole project, we lost money. I mean, we did not make money with the project itself, right? The amount of hours we spent in engineering and also the final cost of the product was not exactly what we wanted, right? Also, it was not easy to get licenses for the software, right? So it took us a hard time to get the authorization from Wonder Boy to launch the Monica cartridge, right? And Monica cartridge was not easy to get the approval from Mauricio de Souza, because he's a good friend and a good partner for so many years. But of course, they didn't make any money there too, right? And our luck was that, Monica is his daughter, right? And his daughter, Monica, was younger, of course, when we launched the games, but she knew us very well. And the director in the group today it's a big group, the director who is responsible for digital and where our product falls in is Monica's son, right? And he confessed that he had a Master System and that that his mother was hiding the Master System in a place every time when he was not allowed to play. And during the meeting, he confessed to his mother that he knew exactly where she was hiding it and that he was sneaking there and taking it even when he was not allowed. So she was not very happy, but finally we got the license.
Oh my God. Real family stories here.
Yeah. So this is... but it was really hard to get the licenses, right? Even at that time it was. I don't know if I told you the story of Carmen Sandiego. Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego?
Yes, we know the games. Yes, yeah.
You know the games. So we wanted to launch it in Brazil and we did, for PC, for Megadrive, and for Master System. And we thought we would sell millions, and we did a very interesting TV campaign. We teamed up with the largest, publishing company in Brazil to give a kind of dictionary together. It was a huge project, and Brother Bund, of course, had the rights for Carmen Sandiego. And when we told them that we want to do it for Master System, the lady asked me, what is Master System, right? I said, it is an 8-bit console from Sega. And she said, no, I never heard about it in US, right? Yeah, but you have a game from... you released the game in... No, we never did it. And then she said, I told her, can you check with the other people in the company? And then she comes back to me and said, I checked. Nobody ever heard about this project. You are mistaken.
Wow.
For my luck, I had bought at that time in Toys R Us, I don't know how many years ago, some units of the product, which was released by Parker Bros, right? And for my luck, I knew very well a Hasbro director who was a big shot in Hasbro and had worked in Parker Bros at the time when and he was one of the persons in Parker Bros who was dealing with Brother Bund, right? So I sent her a copy of the instruction manual and a photo of, and she still said, no, that's not our product. That's not the licensed product. So then I asked this big shot at Hasbro if he could send her an email or fax, I don't know what it was at the time, telling the story And he did. So I went there, and it was near Sausalito that they had their headquarters. And then finally she said, "You're right. You're absolutely right. It was a product, but we can't help you and we can't license it to you." I said, "Why not?" "No, we can't, because we cannot check the product once you finish it, right?" "Oh, but you already pre-approved it once for Sega, and Sega approved it. So why do you need to check it?" Because we need to check it, blah, blah, blah." And then finally I convinced her to approve it, and she did the license. She gave us the license to manufacture the cartridge, right? And we had here a very big library of source codes, maybe a better library than even Sega had in Japan. So sometimes they were asking us for very old Master System source codes. And we did it, and then we sent the cartridge for her for approval, and the approval would never come. And I said, "What's happening?" And said, "No, we can't approve it. We can't approve it." Then I went there again, visit them, and said, "What's happening?" And she said, "I don't have a Master System console. How can I check if it works, right?" And I say, "Why didn't you tell me, right? I can send you 100, right?" So finally she said, "No, forget it. Don't send me anything. This is taking too long. Just send me, a final sample from the box, and it's approved," right? So even sometimes to get the license, I don't know how many years ago, was very difficult. You can imagine today.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story that. I've heard similar stories from people who are trying to remake old games, trying to deal with companies that have been taken over, and no one knows who's responsible for the game anymore. And so they get lost in paperwork and lawyers, and so the project gets abandoned. And that's as I say, that's a fascinating glimpse of what was happening in publishing.
Yeah, at that time, imagine today. Sometimes I know very well who owns the music, who owns, So, but one big problem is that some of those companies don't exist anymore, right?
Yeah.
So suddenly the lawyer says, "Okay, you are 100% right. The lyrics and it belong to I don't know whom. The music and the arrangement belongs to you. Are 100%. We found all this information. You are correct. Bad news. The company doesn't exist anymore, and nobody has this right. And without this right, we won't release the agreement, right?" And then you are stuck for 50 years.
That's incredible.
So are Tectoy planning any more mini consoles for the future?
Well, at this exactly moment, we are not. We don't have any particular, in the Sega line. We are working with Atari, right, and launching some of the Atari products, right. But those are not, developed by us internally. Of course, we do some tweaking for quality reasons, because we assemble them, and every product we release that we assemble and which holds our brand, we of course are sometimes tweaking a little bit the hardware part of it.
Yeah. So these are the Atari flashback sort of console, looking back at the old 2600, right?
Yeah. So, and in October now, I think we are launching a new version. Some of them are interesting because they have native HDMI, right? So when you have native HDMI, resolution is completely different in modern, let's say, TVs.
Yes, that was interesting. In sort of doing some research for this podcast, I looked into Brazilian TV, and there's been quite a problem with the high definition standard there.
Yeah. So, but again, let's say TV for us is we were one of the first to when digital TV was introduced in Brazil, our government at that time was a kind of a socialist government, and they said, okay, we're going to do a Japanese pattern, but we are going to somehow make it a Brazilian Japanese pattern, and we are going to protect the local manufacturers, and only them will be able to do it. So I was invited to a meeting at the president's palace there in Brasilia, where they came with those nationalist ideas, right, which we found a little bit strange, right? So I started, let's say, the digital system in Brazil from scratch, and then we, of course, were pushing not to be the only ones, the Brazilians, but have all the other normal companies. When I say, I mean all TV manufacturers, independent from wherever they would come, if it would be Japanese or Korean or Dutch, or I mean, we don't care. We are TV manufacturers, and we have to stick together, right? So again, when we decided about the Brazilian softwares which entered, which are called Ginga, I was lucky that I participated from start on in this project. So everything which is related for TV, for us it's a little bit easier because we have a good background.
I wonder, by the way, as we mentioned the Brazilian market and so on, how much are you aware of the picture you are giving to the community outside of Brazil? I know, for example, that after we talked to you like 2 years ago, Computech Publishing did a report in one of their magazines in which they wrote that Tectoy are pirating Sega products. There are a lot of rumors and untrue stories outside of Brazil.
This particular one, I was mad. I wrote them, right, and asking that they should officially retreat themselves. And I have not heard back since. Then I asked the lawyer there if we should sue them, how this would be in how you say, regarding German law, and I don't know, it was something complicated I could not understand, but we were mad because we have launched more than 1,000 different softwares in Brazil, and we are proud of always having had all the licenses, even if some of those softwares have 5, 6, or 7 different licenses. So we have here, I don't know how many archives of agreements, I don't know how many thousands of pages, and this so this was very bad, but I think this was the only bad thing I heard so far. So it's just the exception that confirms the rule.
Well, we can help put the record straight and say that Tectoy have always been an official Sega licensee, have worked closely with Sega over the years, and this Megadrive 2017 is an official product.
Yeah, maybe they were convinced when the vice president himself was here, right? And for the launch, right?
Yeah.
So maybe this changed their mind.
Yeah, and I do know there are Tectoy fans and collectors outside of Brazil. Do you have much chance to interact with them?
I have got many, how you say, requests for interviews from many different kind of retro gaming magazines or bloggers or so on. There is one in Spain who wants me to give a lecture there in April. I think they have a yearly show, and last year I could not go. This year he wants, this year I mean 2019, he wants me to go there. I know they are doing Sam Dyer is doing a book, and so I gave an interview to him. And Sega 16, I think I gave them a nice interview. And I don't know, I think that the number of interviews for foreign magazines and blogs and so on was increasing in the last times.
Yes, you just mentioned Sam Dyer at Bitmap Books here in the UK. He's currently running a Kickstarter for the Sega Master System Compendium, which is going to be a glossy coffee table book full of interviews and brilliant spreads on the games and the hardware. And it's great to hear that you've been interviewed for that, because obviously Tectoy is a very important part of the Sega Master System history. And for the listeners who are interested, you can go to www.smsbook.co.uk to follow the links to the Kickstarter. And as the stretch goals are being met, more pages are being added to the book, and we're hoping soon that it will reach enough money to include a slipcase cover and eventually a lenticular cover, which has moving characters. There's every pledge on the Kickstarter, you get a bookmark and a set of 3D glasses, because some of the spreads in the book will be emulating the original 3D games on the Master System. So check that out, because I'm sure a lot of people will be interested in that.
I wonder, did you ever consider yourself to become such a big shot, as you mentioned that phrase before, in the Sega environment, the Sega community? Or did you never think it would hype so much as it did nowadays?
Yeah, I was really impressed about the reaction here in Brazil, and how the people, especially during those talks, that we had in those libraries and bookstores, and there was here the Comic-Con, and they invited me to Comic-Con, and then it was so many people they didn't even fit. There was not even enough room in the hall we were. It was a big hall, and Comic-Con is from people from different times, right? Much more younger people. But I was really impressed that before I give my lecture, I was walking around the show, which was a huge show, and people would stop me and ask you, "Are you Stefano Arnhold?" And I say, "Yes." And say, whoa, I need an autograph. And I say, "Well, but why would you want to know?" No, because I know who you are, and so on. And those were kids, which was they could be they're certainly not the people who were buying our consoles in the 80s and early 90s, right? So this gave me I was already a little bit shocked. And then when we gave the lecture, it was really impressive how a very young audience of people who, I mean, from a completely different age group, the amount of knowledge they had on details of Megadrive and Master System and MSX. And even there were some questions I went to give after this lecture. There were some people, how you say, broadcasting directly from the show floor, right? So I went to some important places which were packed and huge, and only the very important people were there. I don't know why they invited me, but somehow I was there too. And they even asked me a question on MSX that I could not answer, right? And those were kids which were in their 20s, right? And they were not even born when we had introduced MSX in Brazil. So the hype is really unbelievable. So I imagine that if the feeling is more or less the same in other countries, then it must be huge.
Yes, I mean there's a big retro scene here in the United Kingdom with lots of events happening where people meet up and play the old consoles. We have 2 dedicated museums filled with old computers and consoles, and we have the new arcade club filled with many generations of arcade hardware as well. So retro gaming is big over here in the UK, and Sega is obviously still very popular in Brazil. Do you think it's a shame that Sega is no longer in the hardware business, the hardware side of the games business?
Yeah, well, definitely yes, because if you imagine that in Brazil, especially during those times, the piracy was really huge, right? You have to imagine a complete different environment where we had to make money on hardware sales, not on software sales. So the concept of video games is a kind of razor blade theory, right? Where you give out the console at cost or something like that, or even lose money, and then you recover on the software. And after some years, we could not even think of doing it because we were not making any money on software at all. So when Sega left the hardware market, we had big problems here, right? Because the only good thing for us was that we maintained the legacy platform. So when they introduced Sega Genesis, they killed Master System. When they introduced Sega Saturn, they killed sometime later Genesis and so on. So when Dreamcast was there were no Sega Saturns anymore. And we kept producing the legacy platforms. So this was our luck that we somehow survived.
Yeah, interesting. As I say, it's clear that Tectoy is an important part of Sega's legacy. And I would wonder, do you have a favorite game that Tectoy has published over the years?
Well, again, difficult to say, but the Woody Woodpecker game for us was very important because it was our first original game, right? Again, the research before it was very interesting because I was researching different characters, and I had close contacts with TV. And then I found out that Woodpecker had the largest library of episodes of any character. So we did a study of the characters in Latin American TV from Mexico down, and found out that Woody Woodpecker was one of the most shown cartoons still in most of those countries, right? So this was interesting, and this encouraged us to get the license from Universal. And the only, let's say, difficult parts there was it was our first game from, let's say, original game from scratch. And the people wanted every time to make the game better, and it was never ready, right? So one day I said, I don't care what you want to do. We are launching it the next months, and that's it, right? Because otherwise we're going to have a fantastic game for my grandchildren. But that's for me an important game because it, let's say, we developed it from scratch, but it's very difficult to choose one game.
Okay, that's great. So just thinking about the video game market in Brazil, did Nintendo have as big a presence as Sega?
Well, Nintendo has a complete different story because it was not introduced in Brazil by Nintendo itself, but by the 8-bit clone manufacturers, right? Mm. So we were always facing difficult competition environment because we had to compete with the fake products, and the cost of their product was really low. You know the difference between Master System hardware and Nintendo Entertainment System hardware. So you know that by the how you say, the bill of materials of Master System is already higher from start, right? And then if you compared at that time the components you could freely buy in Taiwan from the clones, they'll cost a fraction of what we were paying Sega for the components, right?
Yeah.
And to make things worse in Brazil, those 8-bit clones, they were not sold under the table. They were sold by Gradiente, which was a huge company, right? The one which had introduced Atari 2600 in Brazil. They were introduced by CCA, which was at the time, if not number one, maybe number 2 or number 3 largest TV and number 1 audio largest manufacturer in Brazil, right? So those were big companies, right? Mm-hmm. And I was meeting Nintendo at every CES and at every, I don't think we had E3 at the time, it was CES twice a year in Chicago and in Las Vegas. I was meeting with their counselor trying to fight the clones here in Brazil, right? Mm. It was really, really difficult. So when they finally decided to come officially into Brazil, they did it through a retailer, which was Mesbla, which does not exist anymore. And they sold 3,000 Game Boys to this retailer. And this retailer had a very hard time selling it because, of course, it paid all the duties and the price was very high. Then finally, Gradiente, which is very, very active and was a very active and very smart company, what they did, they teamed up with Estrela. Estrela was the largest toy manufacturer in the market before we entered the market. When we entered the market, they had 55% of the market and 50 years, right? We had 0 years and 0 per share, and in 4 years we beat them. But that's another story. But in their favor, we can say that Estrela had a very, very good reputation. You know, they were really nice people. And Gradiente's reputation was so-so because when we lost the bid to them for Atari 2600, it was because Time Warner at the time wanted licensing conditions which were not possible. You know, you could not comply with them. So we were not able to sign an agreement, and they accepted it. And of course, we're not able to fulfill them because they were unfulfillable, right? So this at that time was still a very small industry. So the officials that you would find in Sega, in Nintendo, basically all came from Atari, from in US, right? From Mattel Electronics, right? It was a small world, so everybody knew them very well. So they were very smart. They teamed up with Estrela, and they found a company here in Brazil, 50-50 kind of joint venture, and then they introduced the video game from Nintendo officially in Brazil. And they had, of course, no chance in 8-bit, but they did a very good work in 16-bit and an excellent work with Game Boy.
Right. You mentioned the MSX computer earlier. Was there much of a home computer scene in Brazil? Which machines made the most impact, do you think?
Yeah, it was. You did not really have so many. I say personal computers were starting, right?
Yeah.
Commodore, of course, was well known. TKS, those kind of products, right? And you had the first, I think, were 16-bit processors, if I remember well, something like that. starting to go into homes, right? But and again, when we did MSX, our competitor was Gradienti. So just for you to, we were always together. But they were really very not only competitive but very competent company.
So, what do you think will this future look for you? I mean, you say you didn't really do any money on the Megadrive, so you only did it for the community? So you are mainly making money with other products that isn't involved into retro gaming?
Yeah, when we decided to launch a product to celebrate our 30 years of existence and 30 years of relationship with Sega, which we thought was something special because there are not so many, companies in the world that have, I would say, video game companies, right? That have 30 years of relationship with anyone. So we thought this would be very special. So the decision to make the Megadrive was not based on let's say, on the normal decision-making process of any product, right? And of course, we lost money, but we are happy with what we did, and the rewards are the kind of rewards that money cannot buy. So we don't care. We are really, really super happy with it. But at the moment, we are not, let's say, seeking other venture of the type, right? Because of the difficulties of the financial difficulties, right?
So, if you could turn back time, what do you think you would do different looking at it nowadays? Is there anything you regret and you would change?
Yeah, there is one thing I would regret. On one side, I'm happy on the decision I took because it was a loyalty decision, and I'm happy that I was loyal. But we had very good relations with Sony. And Sony was working very well with Sega CD and with Megadrive, and we were enjoying a very special relationship with Sony. And then one day we go to a CS show, E3 or CS, I don't know if E3 was already there, maybe already started. And we want to talk about our new products with them for Sega CD, and the lady, I can't recall her name at the moment, at the beginning of the meeting said, wait, we cannot start the meet because Sega just launched Sega Saturn in Japan, and we heard that you're going to launch Sega Saturn in, I don't know, November, October, I don't remember exactly the months, in Brazil. And you have, before we go on, you have to decide if you're going to introduce a Sony PlayStation product or if you're going to keep with Sega. And if you tell us you keep with Sega, we can't continue doing business with you. And, well, it took me like 15 seconds to tell her that we love them and that we wanted to continue doing business with them, but that we would launch Sega Saturn, right? And if you ask me today, I mean, the founder of Tectoy always said it's easier to be a historian than a reporter, right? So today it's easy to say that I took the wrong decision, but I'm happy that I took the loyalty one. But if I have to regret, maybe that's one case.
Because then Sony made a big success with the Sony PlayStation.
Yeah, and I think at that time we had all the, how you say, all what would be necessary to make it really successful in Brazil too. And and the other one, which maybe I also regret, is the story about the I don't know if you know this story about black and white portable product for Sega.
Never heard of it.
No. So Sega had Game Gear, which was fantastic. It ate a little bit of batteries, but it was really a nice product. Playing Shapen Columns or Super Monaco GP in 2 different Game Gears was amazing, experience. Seeing TV on the Game Gear with the TV adapter was not the best in the world. But so what we did, we found a Taiwanese manufacturer who had a kind of a portable black and white, not exactly like Game Boy, but more or less Game Boy style of product. And our engineering guy said, look, we could really change this product into something really nice, because they have, I don't know what kind of audio problems, but we can fix it. So Tiger at that time was really strong all over the world with their handheld games. So talking to them, I said, what do you think about a product like that? If we license Sega games, right, for this product, how many would you distribute in North America? I don't know the exact numbers today, but because this is a long time ago. And they said so many. Then I said, well, if you can grant me those numbers, then the whole project is, let's say, economically feasible. So I went to talk to Nakayama-san, and in 5 minutes he said, no, never. We'll never do, Sega will never have a black and white portable unit. We only do colored units. And what I regret is that I gave up, after he said the first time. Probably if I would have visited him 200 times, maybe one day he would change his mind. But I ask myself, what would have happened if we would have had a portable black and white Sega with Sonic product in the market? This could have been an excellent product.
Yeah, true. Maybe. Well, I guess Sega was more like thinking that color is more important. But on the other hand, gamers more decided for longer lasting batteries and a bigger library of games available for some reason.
Yes, it's interesting looking back at those handheld units, the handheld games, the Game Gear, the Game Boy, the Atari Lynx, all coming from 3 very different companies and taking a very different approach to what works. And looking back, we can say that Nintendo got it right with the Game Boy. As Joerg just said, long battery life, lots of different games, and of course the killer app in the form of Tetris. But you can also compare it now with Sony, who tried first with the PSP and then with the Vita to produce a console-style experience on a handheld game, and it never really worked. It's only this unusual games, thinking of Loco Roco on the PSP and Gravity Rush recently on Vita. It's only those sort of games, a new experience, that have really kept those handhelds going.
Yeah, well, you have cell phones today, right? Which are the Game Boys of that time, I would say. But if you look the hundreds of millions of units that the Game Boy and Nintendo DS family did, those numbers were really, really impressive, right?
Yes.
So I believe maybe if Sega, with our help, would have a nice product, maybe we could have had a good share of this market, even not being the leaders, because I think they had a head start. Nintendo had a head start that might be difficult for us to catch up at that time. But even if we would have 20-30% of that market, that alone will be, 50-60 million units, which would be not bad at all.
I wonder, as you said, you have no plan for future ventures into producing retro consoles in the near future. Do you have any personal goals?
Yeah, that's that's difficult to answer, right? Of course, we still have many different. My problem at the moment is that I'm doing lots of different things. I'm very involved in the sports area. I have different roles in the International Ski Federation, in the International Paralympic Committee, in the Brazilian Olympic Committee, in the Brazilian Paralympic Committee, in the Brazilian Snow Sports Federation, and in many technical committees of those. So I think I have 12 different responsibilities in the sports area. I have some important activity in the environmental area. I was running a foundation environmental area until some years ago. I'm a member of the Council of Conservation International, supporting mainly marine environmental projects in Brazil. I'm very involved in sports governance, and I'm helping change the face of sports governance in Brazil in huge projects. So at the moment, I have maybe too many ongoing projects that it's difficult to fit new, ventures at the moment. But I'm still young. I'm only 64. So I probably have another 60 years to do some interesting stuff.
Yes, it's interesting. I found by interviewing people like you who are involved into technical development, they never rest. They always keep being interested in that and keep on going, being involved.
Yeah, I think technology is a fascinating area. It's not easy to make money because of the development of technology. Maybe I forgot to mention that I'm still an active athlete. I still run my marathons, and I am an active alpine skier, and I participate in the Masters World Cups. So if you put and I train 5 to 6 times a week. So if you put everything together, unfortunately, there is no so much time left. But who knows what I'm going to do next?
Wow. Yes, you are very active in many fields. I saw it on your Twitter when you started following me. I was like, okay, that's very sportive.
Yeah. So, but let's see. But what I would say that most of those things in which I get involved are very rewarding. When you save, let's say, a community in a shore in Brazil, that was going into drugs, and you can, and instead of going to drugs and damaging the environment, they start to, to catch and treat very well the crab, and sell them to big restaurants, to big chefs. This is very rewarding. And things you do when an athlete gets a medal, or let's say Brazil is still in the infancy of snow winter games, but we had the 6th place in the Paralympics now in Pyeongchang. He's a 15-year-old athlete, the youngest athlete from the whole Paralympic Games. This is also very rewarding, right? But the chats that I had, the opportunities I had with those Sega lovers, they were especially rewarding. After 3-4 hours talking, I was really, worn out, This was like 11 o'clock in the night or midnight. But I was thinking about my training next day, like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning, right? But on the other hand, the people were so involved and were so amazed that I couldn't go away. So I think that you are very special because you can work with retro gaming and those fields, which I think is a fantastic field.
Well, it's been wonderful to talk to you, and that you've taken the time out of your very busy schedule to talk to us today. It's been great uncovering some of these fascinating stories behind Tectoy and the Brazilian video game market. So I'd like to say obrigado, Stefano.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.